Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Heath Studios in the glorious Southern Highlands of New South Wales. And Matt, I know you've accused me of being a dinosaur over the years, and I've got to
Me, Peter? Never.
I've got to confess, Matt, I still read a Saturday newspaper. So I know most people won't even know what a newspaper is these days, but I hold it dear to my heart that my Saturday mornings are spent reading a newspaper, and I came across a really interesting...
Let me stop you there, right? I read the Saturday morning newspaper. I have it delivered every week, Peter.
You do.
And the Sunday newspaper.
That's right.
And the first thing I read, and maybe this is an indication of my mind, I always tend to go straight to the death notices over my first cup of coffee. But someone said to me, that's an age thing, Matt. Anyway, carry on.
I came across an article by a guy called Tim Duggan. And Tim Duggan, for those who don't know, is an author of a number of best-selling business books. And his article that caught my attention was, what are the key skill sets that people need to survive and thrive in a digital and AI age? And Matt, do you know what the first one was?
Tell me, Peter. I'm sitting here with bated breath.
Well, Matt, the first thing is, before we talk about the skill sets, let me ask you this question. Do you think we need different skill sets to operate in a digital and AI workplace compared to a traditional workplace?
Different's a big word. I think we need to maybe rethink how we look at some of the skill sets. I mean, certainly we're going to need some different cultural capabilities, but generally I would say, yes, Peter, but I think it's a lot more about looking at the core basics of skills that we typically need. And, you're going to talk about this. A lot of it always comes back down to the people, the soft skills as well. They do need to evolve, absolutely.
Yeah. And I think what I'm hearing you say also there is an obligation on employees in a digital and AI workplace to recognize that they need to grow their skill sets. It's not going to be given to them on a plate. If they're going to thrive, then they've got to look for those skills that are going to be helpful. So, Matt, we're looking at what Tim Duggan wrote about the 5 key skill sets for the digital age. The first one he identified was judgment. What do you think judgment means?
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm thinking back to an ex-boss of mine, ex-CEO who I worked for, and one of the terms that he frequently used was, when you do the right things happen. So I think judgment is about having the understanding of what are the right things within the organisation, and what do you need to do to effectively make sure that you're delivering on those as well? Well,
but it sounds easier said than done, Matt, because sometimes we know the hurly-burly of work means you can get consumed by a task. A boss could ask you to do something. How do you determine what you think is the right thing?
Well, I think it always comes down to prioritisation, Peter, at the end of the day. Judgment is as much about, judging what priorities are important and which ones are not. Again, going back to leaders I've worked for in the past, they'll have very structured approaches to what do they need to do to, number one, deliver on the KPIs, number two, deliver on their personal sort of expectations, and number three, to deliver on what the other people within an organisation are looking for from them as well. So when the kind of demands come in on your time for certain things and certain activities, almost triage them. Think about, do I have to do this to deliver on my KPIs?
Yeah.
Right? And if the answer is no, do I do it? Then you say, will it help me uplift my overall team's capabilities?
Yeah.
Yes, it will. Okay, maybe that's something to look at. Will it? Won't it? Let's put it aside. And that third piece as well is like in terms of when you think about it from a personal development point of view, will it help me become a better leader? If the answer is no, brush it aside. So I'm being a bit flippant here, but it's really triaging tasks and priorities that you have to understand, is doing it going to have the right impact on you? Or are you just kind of, checking off someone else's priority?
Or reacting to the latest crisis.
Or email.
Yeah, exactly.
Email is, if you look at classic inbox, your classic inbox is somebody else's to-do list.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
So you need to spend some time each day, or each week, I should say, sitting down and thinking, what's the work I'm going to do over the next week? What are the priorities? Where do I need outcomes during that week?
Yeah, no, I don't do it when I get sacked.
Yeah.
Basically.
So, Matt, the second skill he identifies is storytelling. Matt, I hear this a lot, but I suspect a lot of people think there's something trivializing about telling something of a story rather than the straight facts and figures. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, I think if you consider a lot of the conversations we've had as part of Boon or Bust, Peter, a lot of that is embedded in stories, personal experience. I think that storytelling can sometimes get a bad rap. Well, I want to tell you a story. Remember Frankie Howard, showing my age here, right? Back in the UK. But if you can kind of bring together the message you're trying to get across and tell it in such a way that your audience can relate to that, so making it relevant to them. And, we talk about this when we talk to technology vendors, of which I and you, we do a lot of that on a regular basis, is bring your product to life. We talked in the past about not making it all about technology, but how will that technology help you, build better outcomes for your customers? And by the storytelling there is, bring to life a customer example or case study. That's a story.
Yeah.
It's not all about, I want to tell you about my lovely walk in the Southern Highlands on the weekend.
Yeah.
It's kind of about bringing to life the position you're trying to make.
Well, and I think also too many people, I think facts and figures stand on their own, but unless they're given some context, like a story, they're meaningless to a lot of people.
Absolutely. I mean, unless you're talking to a die-in-the-heart sort of bean counter. They just want to talk about the finance and the money, that kind of thing. But generally speaking, you're making it real to people. You're making it relevant. You're showing the empathy that you understand they need as well.
So, Matt, the third skill that Tim identified, and it is one of the most sought-after skill sets on LinkedIn, he says, after AI skill sets, is one that surprised me, and it was conflict management, conflict resolution. Do you think the digital age, the AI age, makes for greater conflict between people?
I think it makes for a greater number of situations where people don't know how to manage conflict, would be my response to that, Peter, because others have grown up in a digital world where we don't pick up the phone, right? We send an email. When you think about, conflict during the pandemic, for example, I think generally the level of conflict and confusion increased because we didn't have those opportunities to get face-to-face and kind of thrash out some of these challenges in general. At the end of the day, it's a lot easier to press send on an email. Yeah. And now, myself, I kind of made a vow this year that I was going to use AI for email generation. And now for many, it's like, okay, I need to send this message to Joanna, and it's a bit of a tough message, but can you soften it up for me, please? So we're getting all this disingenuous communication going on. But the problem is you're not learning how to deal with it. Conflict is not bad. Well, how you resolve it is good.
Well, and I think that there's a lot of value in that. But I also think that where there is conflict, it's better to look people in the face. It's not to do it through some digital means. Yeah. So if you got a bad message for Joanna, whatever mechanism you use, she's going to be disappointed. But if you do it in person, she's going to feel actually you were attentive to her when you delivered it.
Mm-hmm. No, I absolutely agree. And I think that at the end of the day, when you look at conflict as well in general, I think many of us struggle with it. We don't like to tackle conflict head on. And we've all got, this, whatever the number is, there's kind of 4 key personality traits within most human beings. And I think where I've seen great sort of capabilities come to the fore is when you sit down as a team and kind of work through and understand how different people interact, how they think, what are their strengths? Are they conflict averse? Do they thrive on conflict? This sort of thing. And we need to evolve ourselves to be able to have the right conversations with the right people for the right reason.
And I think people respect you in the end. And I think that's why Tim's saying it is an important skill. If you embrace the need to conflict management, people will value your contribution. They won't see you someone who's a coward who sends an email and runs away.
We will, and we're not saying here for a moment that, conflict's good. I don't think conflict is good. And we need, as leaders, to do everything we can to minimize the ability for conflict to arise within an organization. But then having said that, as I said at the beginning, Peter, conflict resolution is an art at the end of the day. And that's why you get mediators. That's why you get these, mediators for trying to create ceasefires in wars and all that kind of stuff. as
Marriage
well.
guidance counsellors.
Fortunately, I've managed to avoid those, Peter.
That's right. Matt, the fourth skill that Tim identifies is a sort of collaborative intelligence where people need to get better at learning how to work with machines and technology. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, when we think about the topic du jour, AI as well, particularly, but this is really about how can we work with AI, not just use it. And what I mean by that is, and we've discussed this in the past as well, AI is only as good as what you ask it. So that kind of prompt engineering piece in general as well. So when we think about the need to sort of drive more collaborative intelligence in general, look on AI as almost a team member, someone you can collaborate with to get help with, not to get all the answers, but to really help you, understand perhaps what's causing some of these challenges as well.
So we could call AI Dexter or something like that, and ask Dexter a question, and Dexter could tell us what we have to do.
Could do. Was it the old Microsoft paperclip? That
was the other one. Yeah. But I think what I'm hearing you say is that we have to realize that in the world we're going to be working in, there's going to be increasing use of AI agents, chatbots, robots, things like that. And the idea is to recognize that we're not going to master engagement with them immediately, but we've got to embrace the reality of their existence, find ways of working with them, and get better and better at it.
Exactly. That's why he calls it collaborative intelligence. It's not just collaborating with your physical colleagues. It's collaborating with the intelligence at your disposal, whether it's AI or machine learning, whatever.
And the judgment to realize sometimes when the agent or the bot may be better at doing a task than you and freeing you to do more high-value work.
Exactly. I would say, though, and I'm going to go on a bit of a rant here, Peter.
Go on.
It's an interesting thing because I made a comment on LinkedIn a couple of weeks ago where over the Christmas break, I love music and I just drive my wife mad. I listen to music all the time, right? But anyway, and I came across this artist and she was kind of, 70s, 80s, funky soul, really good lyrics, great voice, all that kind of stuff. And I started to research her a bit. And in the end, when I dug and dug and dug, I found out that it was actually AI-generated content, but it was exceptionally good. But then you start listening to the lyrics and you realise, it's a bit of a mishmash of what we've kind of heard before. Not obviously, but obviously because what's been put into these music LLMs is obviously what's coming out of it at the end of the day, mashed up. But then even more randomly, so I'm driving here today to the studios, I'm listening to a song by the Beautiful South, who's an English band from Northern England. And I was listening to the lyrics, and they can be quite random. I think, AI could not generate these lyrics.
Yeah.
And it's kind of me thinking that, again, when we think about collaborative intelligence, the output is only as good as what you put in at the end of the day. Because, people may say, Matt, you're delusional. Of course, AI could generate those sort of lyrics. But when you start to listening to them, in my head, I'm thinking, only a human mind could come up with these sort of things.
Scenarios or things like that.
No, exactly. That's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Matt, the fifth skill set that Tim identifies is unlearning. And in many ways, that's the most challenging thing, isn't it?
Oh, it's classic, can you teach an old dog new tricks, that kind of thing. But unlearning is important, in terms of if we think we're always going to do things this way because that's how we've always done them, we're not going to increase productivity. We're not going to go to the next level. Look at, legacy systems, for example, and legacy processes. Much of that is because of legacy mindsets.
Yeah.
And we talk about this over and over again. For 30 years as an analyst, it's not always the technology. It's not always the funding. It's the mindset that holds businesses back. So we need to help our people unlearn what they've always done. And, that classic default, well, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Yeah.
We've got to say, that's gone. I never want to hear that again at the end of the day. It's not if it ain't broke. It's how can it be better?
Yeah, but Matt, isn't there a danger we throw the baby out with the bathwater? Things that have worked well for us over the time, some of our skill sets that have made us effective, do we abandon them for new technology, which we've been saying today? We're still learning the ropes with it.
No, I'm not saying you should abandon everything, Peter. But what I'm saying, again, I'll use the audit word if you like. What I'm saying is look at the processes or systems which are good.
Yeah.
and potentially they can't be better, then look at those ones which you think, this probably could be a bit better. So again, it's not a one-size-fits-all argument here. It's a case of looking for how we can do things better than we're currently doing. Because, again, if you think about, my HR system's great, it runs, it does what I need it to do. That's fine. But if you did X, Y, Z, could it help you analyze 1,000 applicants in 30 seconds rather than 10 minutes?
Yeah.
And then not reject and accept based on that, but give you a shorter, quicker list to be able to really put the time and value and effort in those people need, because that's not happening right now.
Well, and what I'm hearing you, Matt, is a lot of the skill sets that Tim Duggan has identified, they're interlinked. So we talked at the beginning about judgment. Part of judgment is learning what to let go of and what somebody to do. Yeah. And here we do in unlearning. Do I need to do this, or could we use somebody else to do it? Could I do this in a different way, a better way? If I've got to get these outcomes in this period of time, what's the best way to do that? Yep. But, Matt, I've got a very favorite quote from Warren Buffett. One of the wise sage of Omaha, a man who self-made billions of dollars, made himself the richest person in the world. And he once said, "Can you teach a new dog old tricks?"
That's a good point. And I would say also on that point that when you look at unlearning, unlearning needs to start here.
Yeah.
At the top of the organisation.
Yes. Yes.
And I talk about this concept from the broom cupboard to the boardroom. This is a collective challenge, right? If we don't unlearn up here, then down here we're never going to unlearn anything or do things differently.